Hey y'all, it's the Slav, and I spent the past couple of days traveling across a couple borders and going back about 6 years in time. What you see in front of you is Portugal in 1808. This is the Vimeiro scenario from Napoleon Invades Spain, which is the 11th title in OSG's Library of Napoleonic Battles system. For those of you unfamiliar with the system, it is an attempt to crate up all of Napoleon's major battles, not even just Napoleon's, but other battles that were commanded by some of his lieutenants throughout the Napoleonic Wars, even going back to the Revolutionary era. Um, and it packages them up for 5 battles per box. And they've released, I believe, 16 titles so far. Their next 2 will be re-releases of some of the earlier titles to bring them up to the current standard, as the system has evolved over the past 20 years or so, I think it is. Some things have been changed and tweaked, graphics enhanced. So those will be available for people who want to upgrade. Personally, I'll sit pat with the 2 original editions that I have. But this system, for those of you not aware, is descended from Napoleon's Last Battles, which is a 50-year-old title published by SPI. It was one of their great quadra games. Us old grogs will remember. They had 4 battles, usually related by time or campaign, packaged in one box. Each of them was what they called folio sized, which was usually a 17 by 22 inch map, no more than 100 counters, and a 4-page folder of standard rules for the box, and then a 4-page folder of usually 4 pages of exclusive rules for each game, showing the differences of that particular battle from the greater system itself. And that system was actually descended from the even more venerable Napoleon at Waterloo. And if you're sort of a younger boomer age grog like I am, then I'm sure you remember this. SPI published this as an introduction to wargaming. They were issued free of charge to Strategy and Tactics subscribers, and they were encouraged to hand these out to friends and get them hooked on wargaming, and it certainly worked. It contained Napoleon at Waterloo the game, 4 pages of rules, and an 11 by 17 map sheet of Waterloo. And you put your counters on there. You can see all the hexes have the prearranged setup hexes, tell you where to put the units. And it was about as basic as you can get. Combat factor, movement phase, combat phase, and slug it out. So that was the original system. The Napoleon's Last Battles built on that system to create a quadra game of 4 linked battles. Fast forward 50 years, and we now have this, the Library of Napoleonic Battles. Same basic engine, enhancements though. The rulebook for this does weigh in at about 22 pages, but it's double column type, kind of larger type size, generously illustrated. So it's not nearly the bloat that you do get from some current systems that have become standardized and upgraded throughout the years and just get bigger and bigger and bigger rulebooks. The major enhancements that Kevin Zucker and OSG have made to this system is a command system. So you do not get to just push every counter around every turn, have movement, have combat. You need to have your units in command. And that means that you want to keep them within the radius of your leaders. Now, this scenario has a little slight difference to most. Usually the system will, each battle will have a commander, Napoleon, Wellington in later battles, and then they will have what are called officers, and they are actually the formation commanders, the corps commanders, division commanders possibly. So they need to stay within the radius of that commander to be able to keep their units in full command. In this game, the 2 leaders present are sort of a hybrid. They General Junot here for the French, and Wellesley, before he became the Duke of Wellington for the British, they are a hybrid. It's called a commander officer. So they combine the characteristics of the 2 levels. For this scenario, practically speaking, without getting into the weeds here, that means that each one of these commanders, as long as they keep their units within a radius of 4 hexes of them, those units will be able to move to their full advantage without any impediment. Normally in the system, without, or even in this game, if some of these units will move out beyond that command radius, they have to roll against their initiative value, which is that middle factor. So for Margeron's cavalry here, that number 3 is an initiative rating. They roll against that rating to see if they can move. If they fail it, they don't move at all. It's not a question of reduced capacity or some other kind of restrictions. They are bolted in place. So it's kind of like getting yourself a really crappy roll for movement allowance in great campaigns of the Civil War. It can be very frustrating, just as in that series. Each scenario in this series also will generally have 2 options. You'll have what's called the Day of Battle scenario, which is the historic set piece. Units are deployed just as they were when the battle kicked off, and you're going to fight it out from the historical starting point. Just about every game also includes what's called, however, an approach to battle scenario. That scenario will rewind the action several hours, possibly even to the previous calendar day. And that gives you some more options for putting your own fingerprint on the battle and trying to maneuver into a different position to kick the battle off. Because let's face it, how many times do you want to just march Heath down the Chambersburg Pike and have him crash head on into Buford to kick off the Battle of Gettysburg? It's always fun to try some different setups and approaches, certainly in my opinion. So that's what I've done here. This is the approach to battle scenario. Wellesley's forces are set up here, mostly to the south of the city of Vimeiro, right here underneath Gardner's artillery. And the majority of the French forces have just entered the board here from the south map edge along this road. There will be one other French unit that comes on as a reinforcement at 11 a.m., an infantry brigade that will also enter from here. And that's it. You know, what you see on the map board right now is pretty much it. I did take a glance at the Day of Battle setups, and the main difference really is that the British forces, instead of being deployed to the south here, have slid themselves around in an arc more to the east. And the French at the 10 a.m. traditional start have gotten themselves more aligned from north to south, facing the British. So we'll see if get these moving in a different direction and kick the action off in a different manner. But that's what I'm looking to do when I start this. The other major thing that I think I will do in this scenario that I don't normally do when playing solitaire, the system is really designed for hidden movement. It really shines if you are playing this opposed, and each unit gets flipped over to its hidden side. So for instance, on the back of that vedette, you just see a French flag there. So you normally will construct, if you do have a stack, you construct the stack so that you have maybe a status marker that applies to that stack, which will be obstructing that force, or else you have a 1 strength unit, or in this case, this vedette, that does not have a reduced strength side, so you can just flip it over so that flag will cover the stack. And then the units are only revealed once they've moved into contact and are ready to have combat, or certain other situations. One of these vedettes bumps into them. They and other cavalry units are used to reveal forces. But then once units move out of contact, out of line of sight, they are flipped over again. One other note about the game system, it is locking Zoc, mandatory combat, the good old tried and true kind of stuff for the combat system. So if you move adjacent to somebody, you are going to have to attack them in the combat phase, generally speaking. So units will stay exposed, revealed, as long as that adjacency takes place. So I will be keeping you all updated on this. Again, this is a system that I have played off and on, way off and on. This is also a system where I've got one of my grand total of 2 playtest credits throughout my wargaming decades. I believe it was the Coming Storm, the very first official game in this series. Did some modest playtesting for that, so I'm familiar with the basic mechanics of it. I just want to get re-familiarized with this, some of the details, and some of the more intricacies of bombardment and vedettes and shock combat and so forth, cavalry charges. So I'm looking forward to getting into this and continuing my obsessive fascination with the Napoleonic period. Would also, before I conclude, I'd like to just come up with sort of a book recommendation here. Stopped in my local Barnes & Noble looking for Napoleonic titles. I had not seen this when I did my little pre-scouting online on the store's inventory on the website, but I was pleasantly surprised when I got into the store to see this. The Napoleonic Wars, A Global History by Alexander Mikaberidze. It is a good 600 plus pages chock full of something a little unusual, and I don't see it very often. Actually, I don't know if I've seen it at all, and that's what attracted me to the book. Actually, as the title says, it is a global history of the Napoleonic Wars. So a lot of us, I'm sure, are familiar with all the biographies about Napoleon that come a dime a dozen. We've got Chandler's classic Campaigns of Napoleon, which is the authoritative work on the actual campaigns and battles of Napoleon himself and his marshals. But I've never really seen one that treats the Napoleonic Wars in their global aspect. So we're not going to be just discussing what Napoleon himself is doing in continental Europe, but you're going to be seeing what the French and their enemies are fighting throughout the rest of the world too. So I've just got through the first chapter of that. Looking forward to getting into the rest of that book as well. And I do still have La Bataille d'Orthez set up on the other end of the table. I'll be kicking off game turn 2 on that as well. So I will keep you all posted, and happy gaming. See ya.